This is a very unusual miracle of Jesus that raises a lot of question marks, like, why did it fail the first time? Why does it take Jesus 2 attempts? Why does he tell him not even to go back to the village that he came from? Like, where's he supposed to go? And then how does this man know what trees look like if he's blind, right? So there's just a lot of oddities about this whole thing that have a very clear explanation, but then more importantly, a huge value for us once we begin to unpack what Mark is trying to do. So let's see, what is Mark really trying to do here? There's a few things at play where context is absolutely key. If you look at Mark's gospel, you could divide his gospel into two principal focal points. Chapters 1 through 7 are about, like, that's when Jesus is doing a lot of his miracles and people are starting to become amazed and they're curious about him and they're kind of wondering. But it's also thematically threaded through it, the time where Jesus is really telling people continuously, like, I healed you, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell them. Don't announce this. Just show the priest. So why all the secrecy? And what Mark is known for is this messianic secret where he doesn't want to tap into people's preconceived notions of who the Messiah is. Jesus is trying to reveal the kind of Messiah to them so that they come to understand. Once we get all the way to the end of chapter 7, in chapter 8 and through the rest of the gospel, Jesus will then say, this is the Messiah that I am. So right after this story, Jesus is going to have the whole conversation at Caesarea Philippi. Who do people say that I am? And Peter's going to say, you are Christ, the Son of God. And then he's going to start telling them, right, and I'm going to suffer and die, and on 3 days I'm going to be raised again. But see, Peter's not going to understand what that means. God forbid that ever happened to you, right? That's not the Messiah that you're supposed to be. And Jesus rebukes him for that. But right sandwiched between these two huge sections of, hey, I'm kind of the Messiah, but you don't know what that means, and this is the kind of Messiah I am, is this story of the healing of the blind man. And the blind man represents that. So in the initial work and miracle of Jesus, he sees, but he doesn't see clearly. In the same way that the people are coming to see that Jesus is the Messiah, but they don't really know what that means yet. So it's still foggy. And then he's going to tell them this is exactly what that means. And they're going to have to receive that. The reason this guy isn't to go back into the village is because if he goes into the village, they're all going to be like, oh my gosh, what happened? And then he's going to tell them. And then Jesus can't reveal himself as he is to them. So the time has not yet come. And he's basically saying to the man, hang in there. It's not yet. And so what does that mean for us? It means that the spiritual life, from God's perspective, was always intended to be one of growth. And sometimes I don't think when we approach the spiritual life, we see it that way. For so many reasons. Sometimes it's arrogance. Like, how many people have said to me, look, I've been to Catholic school for 12 years. I know all that there is. I know as much as you do. And so therefore, they're really unteachable from my perspective. Well, no, there's so much more about Christ for you to receive that you have to be available to receive that. Or some of us in humility can overdo it. Like, we can punish ourselves because we don't have it all figured out yet. But God is saying, like, no, this is meant to be a process. That process only actually works into total clarity if we do it the way that Jesus is asking us. So like he says to this man, don't go to the village, right? So in other words, docility is what's going to make this possible. And we exercise that docility when we allow Jesus to reveal himself through the circumstances of our life, through prayer, and in particular, time spent with him in the Eucharist. So that as the years roll by, we come to understand what it means for him to be Messiah, for our false notions of that to fade away, and for his true self to be revealed, and then for our free will to embrace that. And I do think that one of the most powerful ways that that takes place is when we sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. So that brings us now to today, Wednesday, when we expose the Blessed Sacrament. Is available to us in adoration. That's not meant to be supplemental to a well-rounded spiritual life. We're supposed to see that as basically necessary. Like, Lord, this is the time I dedicate. Please reveal the mystery of yourself to me. Help me understand what you are doing in my life so that I might know who you are, my place in this mystery, and that in every space of my life, I say yes to you as my Messiah, knowing what that means.